being a combat surgeon is like being a farmer. When they're out there shooting at one another, you're getting casualties. And then they'll stop shooting at one another when they've had enough, one or the other. And then you don't get any casualties and things, you don't have much to do. Well, surgeons don't function that way. They've got to be active. Their personality is, they've got to be doing something. So I had a sergeant come in with a little Vietnamese girl, about 6 years old, beautiful child, with a very bad cleft palate and lip, hair lip. And he says, Major, if you have anybody here that can fix this, he said, that village chief will be in my hip pocket. So I said, well, I'll see what I can do. Well, I had a surgeon named Dick Morgan. He had some expertise in fixing these cleft palates, so he fixed that one and did a nice job of it. But then, once the word got out into the units there were a lot of cleft palates in Vietnam. So I ended up having 12 beds, 12 pediatric beds for children. And we were doing and getting away with it quite well. And the Inspector General comes by. He said, well, Major, I'm just checking on things. How many beds are you running here? I said, well, it's about 400 beds. Depends how you count them. He said, what do you mean, how you count them? He said, well, we've got a dozen pediatric beds, and then we have some female beds that we use for dependents, wives and things. This is supposed to be a field hospital, he said. You get rid of those beds. I'll be back in a week. And we're not shipping saline and medication and so on and so forth over here to treat Vietnamese civilians. But I knew what I had to do to make that hospital run right. And besides, I knew we were doing a good thing. So I didn't argue with him. He's a 2-star general, inspector. I'm a major. What am I going to say? But I knew I wasn't going to get rid of them. I just didn't know how. Well, as luck would have it, the Vice President, Hubert Humphrey, came to Vietnam the very next day and was brought to my hospital the following morning on a tour. He had to go to my hospital and then an airborne unit, then the air base, and where the napalm and all that was being distributed. But they had a whole itinerary mapped out for him. So he comes to my hospital about 7, 8 in the morning, and he looked exhausted. He was 72 years old, totally dehydrated, and he looked exhausted. So I thought, this man is in no shape. That's a long way, and they fly him without non-stop on military aircraft. You go from Washington, D.C., probably refuel at Travis Air Force Base, refuel at Honolulu, maybe go into Pango, and then down to Vietnam. But there's no stop. I was thinking he's going to have a stroke. So I said, Lieutenant, get lost. I got to take care of this man for a little while. Yeah, I knew he was the vice president. It was Hubert Humphrey, but he's a patient. So something then happens. I don't know whether it's in your brain but it's taught from medical school. You just take care of him. So I had hired 6 girls from the Pasteur Institute, which is a very prestigious unit in Saigon. I mean, that's where the life cycle of plague was discovered, or major parts of the life cycle were discovered. So I got 3 of those beautiful girls to come out, and they said, this is the vice president of our country, now take care of him. Well, they were bringing him green tea, and he was drinking it by the gallon to get hydrated, and cookies. One was massaging his neck, one had a cold pack on his forehead. These are Vietnamese girls who know what to do with men. I mean, they're trained from little to know this. And so they were just, pretty soon, he's out cold. Well, I had told the lieutenant in his presence, just before he passed out, I said, hey, what the hell's life is it? It's his life. Your itinerary is going to have to wait. This is a sick man. So the lieutenant comes barging through the door. He says, "We have an itinerary to keep. We have units waiting to this, so on and so forth." The vice president stands up and he says, "What the hell's life is it?" And he goes back to sleep. It was great. So then he slept about 6-8 hours right there in my office. I had one of these 500 BTU air conditioning. That's just put him out. So then when he came to, he went around, pinned on a few Purple Hearts to the wounded and whatnot, and shook hands and whatnot. I think, I got an idea. So I took one of the children that was pre-op, had not been operated on, and this poor little guy had a tooth coming out of his upper lip, and you could see clean back to his uvula. It was a terrible cleft palate. And then I also had a little girl ready to go home, and the sutures were still in. So I put one in each arm, had the unit photographer take a photograph, and I blew it up, and I put it right in the front of this, where the IG would have to come through. So he come through, officious guy, and he was doing his job. I guess he had to do his job. He said, "Did you get rid of those beds?" I said, "Well, no, the vice president was here, and he said it was a very good people-to-people thing to do, and we should keep doing it. And I'm sure if anything happened to those beds, the United Press International would hear about it before the sun sets. In other words, I would blow the whistle on the IG, and he wouldn't get his next star," which was not a very nice thing to do, but it worked. And he said, "Well, all right then," and he left. And that's the last time I ever saw him.